Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Amy Johnson, and I will be your host for today's show, episode 316 of the Canadiens Connection podcast. This week's show is titled Season Forecast, 10 Key Predictions for the 2024-25 Montreal Canadiens. That's right. We are putting our predictions for the season down on paper, holding us accountable at the end of the season. It's going to be a great show today. And of course, I am pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is the founder and president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Welcome. Glad to have you here in the hosting chair and for our first podcast, our first show of October, which means the regular season for the Montreal Canadiens is right around the corner. And as you said, we're going to be talking about predictions in this show, making some key predictions for the team and for the players on the team. Oddly, as we're recording it Saturday and the Canadiens are heading into their final preseason game of the year, but the NHL regular season is already underway.
I really don't like it.
It's odd. It's very odd.
I don't like it. It's got me all, like, even this morning, DraftKings is one of our sponsors, thanks to our affiliation with the Hockey Podcast Network. And every year when we do our bold predictions episode, I then take some of those bold predictions and I do some small bets on DraftKings of, like 25 cents even on who's going to win the championship, that kind of thing. And then I realized this morning, I'm like, oh my goodness, but the season has started already. I had to rush to my phone. Can I still place those? Yes. Okay, I can. That's fine. It's fine. So but it's got me all.
Did you bet on the New Jersey Devils? Because they're off to a 2-0 start.
I didn't.
They won both games against Buffalo. For that first game on Friday, first star of the game, Jonathan Kovacevic with a goal and an assist. Nicely done.
Round of applause.
Yeah, first game with the Devils. And he gets first star. And on Saturday, it was Jake Allen with the win. So former Canadiens factoring into the opening of the regular season. But we're here to talk about the Montreal Canadiens of this season.
That's right. And we have a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to get you all caught up on the latest Canadiens news, including we have to, of course, review the last two preseason games that have taken place because they were pretty significant in terms of injuries that have occurred, discipline that's occurred, just all sorts of things. And it's really shaping, those two games have really shaped kind of what's going to happen in this final preseason game. So we're going to get you caught up on all of the news of the week from the Montreal Canadiens. It's actually a pretty lengthy roster update this week. We're going to talk a bit about the preseason as well preseason in general for the NHL, because there's been a lot of kind of scuttlebutt about that this week. With teams all around the league. We've got a great prospects report for you. We're going to peek in on some of the Habs prospects and how they are doing in their early weeks with their seasons, whether it's in junior hockey or European hockey, so forth. The Laval Rocket actually kicked off their preseason this week as well, so we're going to touch on how that went down. We've got some great quotes this week, some audio clips for you to listen to, and for us to react to from guys like Marty St. Louis, Jeff Gorton, even we're going to hear from Kaiden Guhle as well. So lots of great information. Also some news from around the NHL, all of that. And I should say our good friend Patrick Williams is making his first season appearance today. He's going to give us a terrific preview of the Laval Rockets season. I should mention that, so you're not going to want to miss that. All of that packed into segment 1. Then in segment 2, yes, Rick and I are going to get through our 10 key predictions for the Montreal Canadiens this season. We're going to be talking about, we're going to make our prognostications of who's going to be leading in points, who's, I'm going to talk a little bit about penalty minutes. We're going to talk about standings, and we're going to get it all down on paper because we're going to hold ourselves accountable at the end of the season. We're even going to throw in some NHL predictions, league-wide predictions as well. It's the time of year to do that. So it's going to be a really fun segment. We've got not one, but 2 Canadiens Connection questions of the week for you to answer for us this week. We can't wait to hear your responses on this one. And then, of course, in segment 3, we're going to get you caught up on some things you might have missed from our team this week. And we're going to bring you that Canadiens Connection question ×2 of the week. Get you all set up for what kind of game action we've got coming up this coming week and get you all ready for the last preseason game taking place on Saturday night. Wow. So don't forget, as always, it's an interactive podcast. We'd love to hear from our listeners and viewers if you happen to be watching this on YouTube. Remember, our audio-only podcast comes out on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music, Amazon Music, all those podcast platforms, comes out every Saturday afternoon. And then the podcast also then appears in video form every Monday on our YouTube channel. So however you are consuming this episode, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments, your questions, your excitement about the season. You can text us anytime through the Rocket Sports text line. That is 585-3-ROCKET. Again, the Rocket Sports text line, you can use it 24/7. It is 585-3-ROCKET. Or you can also drop us a message on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. And of course, no matter how you are currently listening to or watching this show, be sure you are following us so you can subscribe either by tapping the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, the subscribe button in the podcast player that you're currently listening to right now, or just go to CanadiensConnection.fm and you can see all of the different ways that you can listen to and subscribe to our show. All right. Well, what has happened since we last met? Well, there were 2 preseason games since last episode, and the first of them was last Saturday night, and it was a doozy. And it's not a doozy because Montreal lost 2-1. That was kind of, I think, the least of their concerns after Saturday night's game, because in the opening 2 minutes of the game, they managed to lose Patrik Laine and David Reinbacher to not insignificant injuries.
Yeah, this is...
And we're going to talk about those more in depth a little later on, but just kind of setting the stage.
Yeah, I think this is... it was a season-defining, almost, preseason game. And, Patrik Laine and David Reinbacher, Arbor Xhekaj figures into that as well. And we'll add the Ottawa game, the first Ottawa game, won by Ottawa 4-3. I think what I have to say about those 2 preseason games this week is that it's really it must be really difficult for Marty St. Louis, the coaching staff, Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, to really evaluate the players and how he puts, well, obviously with the loss of Laine and Reinbacher, there's decisions to be made, but even on the evaluation of particular players, you had Montreal playing with 4 defensemen and
Lucas Condata playing defense. Everybody it was all upside, and how, power play configurations, penalty kill. How can they evaluate properly? And so ahead of tonight's game against Ottawa,
Marty St. Louis said about the roster decisions that he has to make, it's not because you made the decisions for the start of the season that it'll stay that way. You get evaluated every day. We'll start one way, and I don't know if the decisions we make will be the right ones. We'll find out. Basically, he's saying that, I think, is that he's kind of confirming what I just said. It's really difficult for them to make evaluations that are going to stick or going to apply for, a long period of time. So whatever decisions they make, be prepared to watch changes, call-ups, some rotation.
Yeah.
Now, the key decision there is Kapanen. Of course, that can't. Once they make that decision, it's kind of set in stone for the remainder of the season. Again, we'll talk about that in a bit, but
we'll get into all of those kind of details here in a little bit.
But those two preseason games this week kind of changed everything for the Canadiens this season.
Absolutely. And we saw, they lost Jack-Eye in both of those games due to being ejected from both of those games. The second game was Tuesday night's game against Ottawa. They lost that one as well, 4-3. Had a bit of a scare with Kirby Dach when he had to leave in the first period, and I think everyone was about just ready to just throw their hands up in the air. Thankfully, he returned to the game because it was just absolute nightmare situation. So I think everyone's going to be on pins and needles for Saturday night's final preseason game, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So the Canadiens, through 5 exhibition games so far, are 2-3-0 in the preseason. Don't forget to follow all of our coverage. Basically, going to going to Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and following us at Rocket Sports is a great way to keep tabs on what's been happening and what's going on. And of course, we've got exclusive content over at InsideTheCanadiens.com. In terms of the training camp and its update, we're in the imminent phase for final cuts. I would imagine that if final cuts are not made immediately after the game tonight, then they will come probably no later than Monday afternoon, as the Canadiens need to make those last decisions before Wednesday night's first regular season game. And I think, Rick, that they're going to have, as you alluded to it a moment ago, with what are they going to do about Kapanen, there are definitely some prospects who are going to make the decision difficult for Jeff Gorton, Kent Hughes, Marty St. Louis. It's not necessarily a given at every position. And I think there's some guys who are usually used to being in the lineup that might be a little bit worried about their job.
I think that's quite fair. Interesting what we know about the lineup for against Ottawa, that most of the regulars won't be there. But interesting, Arber Xhekaj will be there. And Marty said that he'd like to see Xhekaj finish a game in the preseason. As you said, he hasn't done that yet. But things are really fluid. Heading out to or up to Mont Tremblant, Marty St. Louis had said, we're going to focus on special teams. We're really going to focus on the power play. And then when they got there, they didn't. They had very intense practice, especially on Saturday. But things changed. And he said, no, it's not necessarily about reps for the power play and so on. So their plans certainly have changed with respect to practices and to games. They may take a little bit longer than usual to make those final cuts over the next few days.
You did mention Mont Tremblant, that every year they take a few days to do a bit of a retreat in Mont Tremblant, and they did that again this year. They left, boarded the bus, I believe, Wednesday after practice, and headed up for a couple of days in the Mont Tremblant area, and then it was an easy trip over to Ottawa for Saturday night's final preseason game.
And it's nice for the fans every year in that area to get to see their heroes in a small rink environment. If you're scoring, the chants were the Caulfield chants, I think, won out. The Caulfield, followed closely by Mayu chants in Tremblant.
Good for Logan.
Yeah.
Good for Logan. All right, so let's get into the meat of some of this roster news a little bit. Starting with Patrik Laine, left the game in what was, oh my goodness, just an awful looking knee-on-knee collision. I think everyone, Kent Hughes even said it a couple days later in an interview that they in the suite immediately thought that he was done for the season. Mm-hmm. It looked very like the lower part of his leg bent in a way that the lower part of the leg shouldn't go. But turns out he has sustained a left knee sprain, which, I mean, no injury news is good news, but that's probably as good of news as Patrik Laine or the Montreal Canadiens could have gotten coming out of this. But he knew it was bad right away. You saw, I mean, he couldn't put any weight on that leg at all. Helped off down the tunnel and just tossing his equipment as hard as he can in frustration the whole way down the tunnel. It was not pretty, and it was a really, I think, disappointing moment for Canadiens fans who, were really hopeful for Patrik Laine's season and also for what he could bring to the Canadiens this year.
Yeah, and as you said, the fear was that it was going to be the full season that he'd miss. When he left the Bell Center that night on crutches, he was wearing a hinged knee brace on his left knee, and the worst was feared. Now he met with several doctors, and the Canadiens announced that his injury would not require surgery, and that his rehab was expected to be 2 to 3 months, which means he could play, 40, 45, 50 games for the Canadiens this season if all goes well.
2/3 of the year.
I thought it was interesting that that in his interview, Patrik Laine said that it was his decision not to have surgery. I found that quite interesting, which I guess means, and I was chatting with our medical expert, Stephen Morris, about this. I guess it means that he was presented with different options, and that he was the one that chose. I'm going to read the quote, and this is translated, or no, it isn't translated, of course. I met with a few doctors to get different opinions, but the decision was my own. I decided not to have surgery, just to do the rehabilitation and let the injury heal. And so, you wonder why he made that choice. Mm-hmm. And I think that from there's the physical part, but I think there's also the mental, the psychological part for Patrik Laine, because what he's been through and what he was expecting to happen this season. And he went on in the interview to say, the first couple of days while I was meeting with the doctors, getting the diagnoses and getting the scans, I was miserable. It was very emotional. I fought so hard to get back to the game and get the excitement of playing hockey back. And then the second game, my second shift, I get hurt again. In this sport, you get hurt sometimes. You have to stay positive. At least I have the second half of the season left. So, you don't know what treatment options were presented to him. He chose the rehab, and that sprained knee will hopefully respond well. But it's clear that part of this was he was really counting on playing part of the season, whatever part of the season he gets, if it's a second half. And that was key to him dealing with this injury in a positive way.
And I think that's a key part for him in his continuing recovery on the mental health side of things, yes, as well as you as you kind of mentioned there, I think that for him, being able to be a positive participant in this hockey season in some way, shape, or form is a vital part of his continued recovery. And I think, I mean, I had even mentioned to you when this injury happened last Saturday night that my heart went out to Patrik Laine to go home and have to deal with that mentally that night of not knowing what was going to happen and all the work that he's put in within himself and emotionally and with his family support and so forth to get back and be so excited to play. And he looked great in the first preseason game. He looked really, he had a lot of energy and was feeding off the Bell Center crowd. And for all of that to come crashing down in this, as he said, the second shift of his second game, it was devastating.
Well, and you saw that his fiance on social media, thanked the fans for being so supportive, for sending positive messages, that they really helped him and will continue to help him as he goes through this rehab process for the next 2 or 3 months.
Now, for Marty St. Louis, he's going to keep it real with you. And MSL is all about keeping it real, and he has said this before. In fact, he's going to say it again in this quote on Laine getting injured. Of course, he was concerned for Patrik Laine. Of course, he understood the ramifications both for the player and for the team, and so on and so forth. But he did say as well, quote, "I said it before. The league doesn't care. It just keeps going, and for us, we have to keep going, and that's what we're going to do." And I know, Marty, but yes, I mean, the game is the game, and this stuff happens day in and day out. It doesn't make it any less horrible to deal with.
Yeah, I think, and part of that, the message was to the fans. Part of the message is to his players. There was pretty high expectations and talking about whatever in the mix means, whether and it means it was said that way because it infers different things to different people. But that certainly set expectations, and the players always have expectations of making the playoffs. But the big reason they were able to buy into those expectations is because for the first time in a long time, they had someone who was capable, of being a sniper on the second line, and that the Canadiens could have 2 legitimate scoring lines. And that's been put in jeopardy for at least the first half of the season.
Mm-hmm. So now, of course, the big question is going to be, for those couple of months that he's out, who's going to take Patrik Laine's spot in the lineup? And we've seen in the game played against Ottawa, St. Louis was basically auditioning guys to be on a line with Doc. You had Joshua Waugh and Yoel Armia, I think, on a line with Doc that night. There's going to be a bunch of. I'll be curious to see. Well, Doc actually isn't playing in the final preseason game, so there goes that chance for another audition for someone else. But who is it going to be who takes Patrik Laine's spot temporarily in the lineup?
Well, last year we saw a rotation. I think we'll see a rotation this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Josh Anderson, you'd like to see him do something. Yoel Armia actually last year performed really well. Can he continue to do that and do it consistently, I guess, is the question. Does this mean that Alex Newhook gets bumped up to the first line and add some speed to that line, and does Marty mess with the Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, and in that way putting Slavkovsky and Doc back together? I think he
says he doesn't want to do that.
He doesn't want to do that,
but he might have to.
But yeah, I think all options are on the table, and there's a couple of young players that might fill the void as well, and we'll talk about that a bit later in our quotes of the week.
Now, if that injury wasn't devastating enough, less than 2 minutes in a game, well, let's talk about 12 seconds into the game. Before Laine went down, David Reinbacher went down in a really seemingly innocent bit of contact along the boards, which didn't look like much of anything.
No.
But he was completely hobbled, went down the tunnel, and ended up, as you mentioned with Laine, left the arena the same manner: crutches, hinged knee brace, left knee. And for something that looked completely innocent on the ice, which was the exact opposite of the collision with Cedric Paré, for Patrik Laine, David Reinbacher's prognosis nowhere near as good as Patrik Laine's.
No, surgery. He underwent surgery to his left knee, and his rehab is expected to be 5 to 6 months. So could he come back at the end of the Laval Rocket season? Yeah, I guess that's possible. We'll see how it goes. But this is, for his development, this is a real big blow. This season, I guess there was a possibility that he was going to spend some time with the Canadiens, although I think the goal was to have him learn and adjust and transition to the North American game this season. But yeah, his development is last season. You can certainly blame it on the chaos with the team that he was with and the multiple coaches and all that. This season, I guess it'll be blamed on him missing most of the season, if not all, with the injury. So this is difficult. This is a setback for his development for sure.
It does. And it's you never like to see this for a young prospect who, this is going to be an instance. We talked about the mental side of things with Patrik Laine. It's going to be the same thing for Reinbacher here. He did not have the easiest season last year, and to start the season this way with a season that I'm sure he had pretty high hopes for, they're going to need to be sure that the development team is working with him throughout the year to not only help him physically rehab, but keep his morale up as well, and keep his chin up and keep the positive thoughts going and keep him motivated. Otherwise, he could really wallow in the disappointment of this injury. So really key to his rehabilitation, both on the emotional side and the physical side.
For sure.
Let's, do we need to remind fans? Yes, I think we do, that the Montreal Canadiens have the most man games lost in the NHL over the last 3 seasons. Do we want to, things are not starting out well. Let's hope that that streak does not continue. They were first in the league in the 2021-22 season and in the 2022-23 season. They dropped to 3rd last year, Rick, but let's hope that.
Yeah, so
let's hope we stop with these two.
You've already added 40 games or so for Laine and others. Anyway, we'll see how leave it at that.
Now, we did mention that Arbor Jackeye was ejected from back-to-back games this past weekend. This past week in preseason games, and I actually on Habs Hockey Report on our YouTube channel this week, I actually went a little bit into why I agreed with his behavior in one of those games and why I didn't agree with his behavior in a different one. But all he walked out with in terms of supplemental discipline was just a fine after the Tuesday night game, just the league maximum $3,385.42 for unsportsmanlike conduct on Cedric Paré. I'm sorry, that was for Saturday night.
Yeah, I think he really dodged a bullet. Not so much for the hit on Stützle, and yeah, he's courting a very fine line there. And we'll have some questions about him in our predictions for the season.
Mm-hmm. But enough with the sad injury news, and hooray for some positive injury news. Kaiden Guhle is back. He's available to play. In fact, he's going to make his preseason debut on Saturday night in Ottawa. While I'm excited to see Kaiden Guhle play, I don't know that I I understand he needs to get a game in before the regular season, but I'm just like, I think I'm going to be holding my breath for every one of his shifts tonight because I just don't have any idea how that game's going to go.
Well, and again, it's not that long since his appendectomy, his surgery. So has to be feeling a little tender. Although when asked, he said, yes, it would be nice to play a preseason game. I'd like to get rid of the rust a little bit. But if he didn't get that preseason game, as you said, he will. He said, I have no problem jumping into action for the first game of the season. I'm ready. I feel good. When they need me, I'll play. This is, it's the first time we've heard from Kaiden Guhle after the surgery. Nothing to sneeze at, but yes, as you said, it's going to be a little nervous watching him out there, especially with so many of the regulars missing from the Canadiens lineup.
But Kaiden Guhle, of course, has been watching all of these preseason games. He has seen the injuries. He has seen the massive amounts of physicality, the chippiness, the post-whistle scrums. And he had this to say about the intensity of these preseason games.
Yeah, no, it's fun to watch. I mean, those games are fun. Honestly, I kind of want us to save some of that for the regular season, but it's good. It's fun to watch. I mean, it's good that everyone's sticking up for each other, even in preseason. No one's kind of taking a backseat to any of that, and everyone's ready. You can tell, obviously. And we've had some guys last year that were out with injuries, and they're getting in the mix and they're getting in that stuff, and they probably missed that too. So it's fun to watch. It's good to see all the guys kind of standing up for each other and then sticking together.
Used in the mix in a different context.
That's
there,
right.
But obviously talking about Kirby Dach there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's for a physical player, for a player who considers himself a leader, and who is considered a leader amongst the group. It had to be tough, even with sidelined by the surgery. That had to be tough, not being involved in those intense preseason games, and now we'll see what unfolds Saturday night, but he'll be on the ice in one of those preseason games.
So for Saturday night, we did mention Kirby Dach will not play on Saturday night. Marty St. Louis has confirmed that. In fact, the entire top line's not playing.
That's right.
And we know Arbor Jackeye is. But also, I'm not sure.
It looks like there's going to be some call-ups.
Yes, there are supposed to be allegedly some AHL call-ups coming, which is interesting because Laval plays their second and final preseason game against the Toronto Marlies at 3:00 on Saturday afternoon. So this decision to go with not the close to NHL ready lineup on Saturday night is going to affect Laval's ability. I mean, Laval only gets 2 preseason games. That's not a lot to evaluate for Pascal Vincent, and who knows how many call-ups the Canadiens are going to make, but he's going to lose some of his roster for his final preseason game as well.
Stéphane Leroux from RDS has put out lines for Laval, and we'll get to those when we talk about Laval later. But based on that, Chris G is interpreting that means that players like Kandata, Tuck, Gignac, Trudeau are going to receive a call-up for tonight. So
Kandata's a tough guy. Trudeau's a tough guy. Tuck is a tough guy. Gignac is a pest like Gallagher can be. So that's, oh boy. Well, we'll wait to see who actually gets the recall, but this could be a mess tonight. Could be a mess. What I also think is a mess is that reportedly, JF Chamont had an article out on Friday this week and had some quotes in it from Marty St. Louis. And in that report, Marty St. Louis said that in terms of this whole, what do you do about preseason? Marty St. Louis said that he asked Kent Hughes to, I don't know, play a beefed up GM and reach out to Steve Staios to talk about what these two teams are going to do tonight. which is that's the most bizarre thing I think I've ever heard.
Yeah. And also Jeff Gorton said that that the players have reached out to him and said that, typically you don't see the regulars playing in a road game, and throughout the preseason, apparently the regulars wanted to appear in road games so that they could play against actual NHL players, which teams usually play at home. So there's been some things you don't normally see, and we don't know if Ken Hughes reached out. And I guess Marty was looking for some sort of gentleman's agreement in setting lineups. Okay, if you, we know that the visiting team has to declare their lineup first, then the home team will. So Marty was looking for some sort of gentleman's agreement that, listen, we'll play an NHL caliber lineup, and if you do, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't seem to have happened, whether Ken Hughes reached out, whether Steos. The fact that the preseason requires Marty to come up with this kind of idea to have this agreement means there's something wrong with the preseason. And that's just been, around the league, the number of serious injuries that are happening in the preseason. And you have that situation where NHL regulars are looking to tune up and get chemistry on lines and those kinds of things. And then you have the players who are fighting for a spot in the lineup, fighting, for their career in some cases, and trying to make a name for themselves. And a Cedric Perret, sorry,
Cedric Paquette,
yeah, right. That find themselves doing things that they shouldn't do, and against an NHL regular. So there's something wrong with the preseason, and Pierre LeBrun said that the NHL has discussed changing the preseason schedule to reducing it to 4 games, then adding 2 regular season games, bringing the number of 84. I don't think anybody wants to see the regular season lengthened. It's already a grind at 82 games. You understand why the owners would want that. They're giving up some income, and it's not the same income. Certainly in Montreal it is. You fill a building for a preseason game. That doesn't happen universally around the league. But if they could, substitute a regular season game where they'd have more revenue, you see why the owners might go for that. I don't know why the players would, but something has to be done. And this, of course, will all be part of the next collective bargaining agreement, which is 2026.
Yeah, a couple years away.
It's a few years away. So whether anything can be done with an agreement to address next year's preseason or not, we'll see.
Well, Marty St. Louis was asked if he had any ideas in today's morning skate press availability, and not to say that the question caught him off guard, but here's what he had to say about it.
I don't know if there's a perfect answer. Maybe the visiting team has to post his lineup by 4:00 the day before, and But then what, right? Because every team can respond the way they want, right? So it's hard. I don't know if there's a solution. Just hope that the players, play hard but honest. So I don't know if you can fix that. Maybe less games. We'll see.
He's just off the cuff. He's searching his pockets for an answer, and you see him. He started an answer. Maybe posts the lineup the day. It's really sticks in his craw, this business about having similar quality lineups. And he started saying, well, maybe the visitors could post the day before. Well, then what does that change?
It doesn't. Yeah,
it doesn't change anything. So I think what the root of this is how he finished that. The teams play honest, and that's difficult to mandate for sure. And listen, as I said before, this has made it really tough. All of the extracurricular stuff and the supplementary discipline, everything has made it really difficult to evaluate the roster. And even get, you mentioned that the top line will not play in Ottawa, and Kirby Dach will not play. That means the power play is not going to get any additional reps. And we know there's been Mike Matheson said there's a commitment to improving the power play. The whole hoopla about Marty taking over the power play, and they have not scored yet in the preseason. And one of two teams, I think, that haven't scored on the power play, and they needed those reps. They're not going to get them in their final preseason games. So preseason and how it's structured is certainly a topic, a hot topic right now.
It definitely is. All right, let's switch gears and take a peek at how some of the prospects are doing on this week's Habs Prospect Report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So each week we start by highlighting a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we're heading over to the KHL to Torpedo Nizhny Novgorod and defenseman. He's a very, very interesting, as you like to say, defenseman, Bogdan Konyushkov. What's he been up to?
Yeah, he's a reminder, a fourth-round pick in 2023, 21 years old, playing for Torpedo in the KHL, has had a very good week. His last game, it was a 10-1 win for Torpedo, but in that game, he had 2 assists. The game before, he had an assist as well in a 7-2 win. So 3 points on the week, and playing, he had 24 minutes in last Saturday's game and 21 minutes on Monday's game. So a very good week for our interesting defenseman who has been in our spotlight a few times over the summer.
He has. Also wanted to just do a quick checkup on Michael Hage because he played in Michigan's first game on Friday night, centering the second line. And Rick, Mr. Michael Hage had a good start to his season.
He did. Unfortunately, it was a loss for Michigan, but Michael Hage got his first point in the NCAA and then added another. So his first game, he had 2 assists, 2 points. Was a -3 in the game, unfortunately, but good to get those first points under your belt.
We can't touch the prospects report without doing an Ivan Demidov update. And you know what? Young Demidov had a pretty good first full month in the KHL this year in the month of September. Got some accolades, didn't he?
He did. He was named the KHL's Rookie of the Month. That comes after we reported last week that he was Rookie of the Week. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points in 11 games. Of course, his usage is always
under a microscope.
Under a microscope. Yeah. And Habs fans are kind of fed up, given that he was the extra forward in his last game, and the coach is responding and talked about the level of competition and why he's being used the way he is. This is going to be a bit of a battle, I think, throughout the season. If you want some good news, I'd suggest going to Sportsnet and Jason Bukala. He's been on the show, a friend of our show, and he has a column out this week, says Scouts Analysis, checking in on Canadiens prospect. Ivan Demidov, and for the good news. And if you don't know, Jason was a scout before moving to Sportsnet, and the breakdown that he does, complete with video clips, is excellent. So you might want to take a look at that.
Definitely. Switching gears to the Laval Rocket, prospects playing in the American League this year. The Rocket started their training camp on Tuesday, 27 players in Rocket camp. Keep in mind, the AHL does not have the same roster limitations that an NHL club does, so they typically are able to keep more guys on their roster than you would see in the NHL. But 27 players joined the training camp on Tuesday. They cut a few of them before Friday night's opening preseason game. As I said a little while ago, they only get to play 2 preseason games. So Pascal Vincent has a very short window to evaluate his new team and his new roster. Both games are being played at CAA Arena in Belleville. They did this last year as well, where Belleville, Laval, and Toronto all play each other they each play 2 games, kind of like a mini 3-team mini tournament over the course of the weekend in one central location, which is kind of fun. So Laval played Belleville on Friday night, lost that game 3-2. And I kind of take it with a grain of salt. The lines were kind of all over the place. I think Pascal Vincent was just trying to, let's throw some lines out there and see who fits where. I was happy to see, and I even mentioned this to you, Rick, at the end of the game, we know that, and actually Patrick Williams is going to talk about this in more detail in just a moment, but we know that we're excited and fingers are crossed that Pascal Vincent is going to live up to his focus on development that he's talked so much about. And I was happy to see at the very end of the game, with less than a minute remaining, Laval down by a goal. Goaltender is pulled, and it was Florian Jacki that he sent out to take the face off in a very high pressure situation. So that's the kind of thing that I'm hoping that we're going to see more of maybe this afternoon when they play their second and final preseason game against Toronto.
Yeah, the loss against Belleville, a similar story to the Canadiens. It was kind of they lost the special teams battle. The Senators got 2 of their 3 goals on the power play. Canadians had 3 power plays and didn't get a goal. And then there was the Riley Kidney penalty shot, which was kind of fun for a preseason. He
tried.
Yeah, for a preseason game.
He tried.
You said it's just a 2-game preseason. Pascal Vincent won't be able to have some of his regulars in the lineup to even try those out. So as we're looking in the lines that were put out by RDS today, top line you have Owen Beck centering. Sean Farrell and Simoneau on the second line. It's Florian Jacki with Davidson and Machar.
I don't mind that top 6.
Yeah,
that's actually a pretty. I don't mind that top 6 at all.
Yeah, and you see Wotherspoon on defense, the top pairing, and Jelena. And maybe those 2 names might come up when we talk to Patrick Williams.
Well, it's not only NHL preseason that is winding down. The AHL is in the midst of its short but sweet preseason action as well. The Laval Rocket playing 2 preseason games. They just played a game last night, Friday night, and they'll have one more game this afternoon, Saturday afternoon. Both of those games, they're playing against the Belleville Senators and the Toronto Marlies, but both games are being played in Belleville. I like that they do this kind of central location thing for preseason for all 3 teams. So it's the perfect time for us to kind of take a wider, zoom back a little bit and just kind of take a wider perspective of what Laval could bring to fans and to the league and their opponents this season. And who better to do that than bringing back the AHL guru, Patrick Williams. He's back with us, of course, again this season. We're so excited, and he's back here on the show. Patrick, welcome back. Welcome to the new season.
Thank you. Every day,
And the Angels. That's right.
Have awakened. No, thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure. I forget what year this is for us, but feels like
it's been a while.
Probably
5 years,
yeah,
maybe something like that.
Yeah. The time flies and the years pile up, but it's always an honor, and I'll keep coming on here as long as you'll have me. So maybe who knows what the AHL circa the year 2054 might look like. But
wow.
Patrick's a lifer with Roger.
You're still going? I'll still be going. So.
We like that kind of commitment. We like that.
Yeah, I'll probably, I guess we'll all be doing this for a long time. Always a pleasure.
Well, and for those who are perhaps new to the podcast or are not familiar with Patrik, Patrik is the AHL writer on NHL.com. He's also a features writer for the AHL. And starting this season, he is the AHL correspondent for Flow Hockey, which we are quite excited for you in that opportunity. So be sure you're following Patrik on Twitter and X. What I still call it Twitter. And yes, Patrik is just a wealth of knowledge about the AHL. So we appreciate anytime you can come to give us a little bit of your insight on the Laval Rocket. I guess to kind of kick things off, I want to start with the new head coach. And I know you and Rick sat down over the summer and did kind of an in-depth on Pascal Vincent when he was first hired. So we won't go quite so far down that rabbit hole. But what I want to ask you is, now that Pascal Vincent's run rookie camp now, and he's gotten into training camp with Laval, and things have kind of settled down, and he's settling in. He's done a lot of saying the right things as far as we've been concerned about, development first and focusing on the prospects. And it's not always going to be about if they've won the game that night, but have they, allowed their prospects to take a step forward and things like that. My question to you is Pascal Vincent the kind of coach that can stick to a development first mindset throughout the season?
I think absolutely. I think the biggest thing with that question is it's not something that he has to be told to do or that he's mandated to do. I think it's something that's just kind of, for him, it's inherent. He's very much a teacher, very much I think anybody who, watches Pascal Vincent for more than 5 minutes, you pick up on certain personality qualities, and, he's very measured, very composed, very methodical in what he does. And that, I think, certainly is much more geared toward a teaching model, and therefore prospects, development, youth, all that. I saw him, even when he was an NHL assistant coach with the Jets, he had a lot of that mentality. And then certainly once he went to Manitoba with the Moose, ran his own team there, I would say that even was that much more pronounced. He went to Columbus the last couple of years. He got a much different experience there. Obviously, then got to become a head coach last year. I think, as Rick and I discussed, I don't think anybody will hold this last season against him, too much, because, a lot of coaches have come and gone in Columbus, and, I don't know that that's necessarily a mark on his resume. So I think for Laval and Habs fans in general, you're going to see a very development-minded coach, somebody who will, you'll never see him get too high nor low. I don't think I've ever seen him raise his voice, even in an interview or anything like that, and not even really on the bench that much. Maybe he's got a different approach behind closed doors with, but that we don't see, but certainly, publicly he's just very, very even keel. Like he's just That's just his personality. So I think that, circle back to the original question, this isn't something that he's going to have to like kind of force himself to do. This is something that is inherent to the way he approaches coaching overall, no matter what level he's at.
Well, you mentioned not raising their voice with respect to Pascal Vincent, a calm coach, generally thought of as a calm coach. I think all of those characteristics can also be attributed to one Daniel Jacob, who, while he returns to the Laval Rocket, I think he's a little unknown to Canadiens fans, Laval Rocket fans, because when the last time he was in Laval, it was within the very large shadow of Joel Bouchard. And of course, Daniel Jacob followed Joel Bouchard to the Tampa organization and Syracuse Crunch. But he returns. He said he saw the opportunity to return when Kelly Buchberger left the organization. He said that he loved his time in Syracuse, but he said he was sitting on a three-legged chair, is the way he described it, the fourth leg being his family, and his family weren't in Syracuse with him. So he saw the opportunity to make that chair whole with being in Laval and an assistant coach. To Pascal Vincent, the two haven't had any association before, but as I started this, they seem to have a similar kind of approach. My question is about the opportunity he has now. He'll be looking after the defense. He won't have David Reinbacher, unfortunately, this year, but going forward, yes. Maybe Logan Mailloux, maybe Adam Engstrom, maybe even, at times Elaine Hudson. So talk about Daniel Jacob returning to the organization, his new association with Pascal Vincent, and the opportunity in front of him.
Yeah, so he was the defenseman back in his own playing days. He played at McGill, 20 years ago probably, and played a little bit over in Europe for a bit, and then obviously then he made that move into coaching, and he's had a kind of a very sort of steady rise. Went back to his alma mater as a coach. Then him and Joel Bouchard kind of came together there with the Armada in junior, and they've been a kind of a package deal ever since. So that's the interesting part. They went to Laval, San Diego, and Syracuse together before Daniel Jacob kind of has, branched
the
off.
Divorce,
On his own. Kind of struck out on his own and almost opened his own business, so to speak. And so now he's going back to familiar territory, obviously, in Laval, which will be good for him. And like you mentioned, the family considerations are always a big factor, especially at this level where, you're not making NHL money. So, not that money's everything, but, it is, becomes harder to justify being apart. So for him, this will be a chance. I think with working with a guy like Pascal Vincent, he'll certainly get not that he did it with Bouchard, but, certainly a chance to really put his stamp on things. And I think, I'll be interested to see how that partnership comes together. You never really know, like you said, when, you have two people that are, haven't worked together, but I certainly think, I know Pascal Vincent very well. I can't say I know Daniel Jacob that well, but, just personality wise, I think from what I know, they should mesh well. And then, as with anything, there will be an adjustment period, right? At this level, especially where you have so many moving parts, you have, so much turnover, you have new systems, you have, whatever the case may be, whatever the team may be, that's always perfectly normal. So I think you have to just be patient with that aspect of it and then go from there. But I think this is going to be much different Laval look behind the bench as much as anything that you'll see on the ice.
Well, on the ice, I guess, and if we can stay with the defensive side, Daniel Jacob taking care of the defenseman, but it will be a focus because the future of the Montreal Canadiens is so invested in their young defensive prospects. So we had heard Jeff Gorton say at the end of last season that he didn't feel they had the right veterans, and there's some changes there. Did the Canadiens go out? Did the Laval Rocket go out and get the right veterans? And that's going to be very important on defense for veterans to act as mentors to an Adam Engstrom, Mayu, Hudson, and Reinbacher eventually, perhaps next season. The ones I'm thinking about adding a Tyler Wotherspoon, who has a ton of experience in the AHL, and inviting Eric Jelena, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. 33 years old. He's played mostly in Europe. He's gone through 2 hip surgeries. And apparently he was the one that initiated reaching out to John Cedric and asking for an invite. But he referenced the fact that he mentored Moritz Seider when the two were in the SHL on Rogel, and could either of these players and their veteran leadership be a key part, in addition to Daniel Jacob, of developing these young defensive prospects?
Well, start with Wotherspoon. I mean, he's been around now for over 10 years. I mean, he's not a guy that necessarily has gotten a ton of attention at this level, but has always really been a real solid character. Somebody actually played the Olympics a couple years back, so a nice little honor for him there as well. But somebody, like a classic defenseman that's career-wise has kind of made that transition from prospect and kind of on the fence to now decidedly a veteran, decidedly somebody whose top priority is being in the AHL. I like the fact that with a player like Wotherspoon, for example, like they brought him in on an AHL contract. So that defines the terms and the parameters right off the bat. There's nothing in terms, it's not one of those situations where it's a two-way deal and you're bringing in veterans that are, they have maybe one eye on the AHL team, but they're also eyeing, their own situation with a recall to the big club. Like when you sign a guy to an AHL deal, it's very much understood that, this is where the focus will be. He'll be in the AHL this year and to completely concentrate on that. So I like that. I think that was a really savvy move. Just across the board. I mean, they did it with a number of players. They brought in Dauphin. They brought in Josh Jacobs was another one. Vincent Arsenault was in some situations. So I like the fact that like their veteran core are guys that are committed to the AHL club, right? So I think that's a big thing. And then Jelena, obviously that's a tryout situation. It's a different thing, but it's the same idea, right? Like a guy who's coming to play in Laval, not to, I want to be in Laval, but my goal is really, I want to get out of here as fast as possible and get up to the big club. Like, I think that's important because especially the first half, as we know, like the veterans have to drive the bus. For most teams, very rarely do you have, a case where the young guys can kind of like take the reins right from, the first, week of the season. So let those veteran guys like you really kind of coalesce and set that whole standard and set of expectations right from the get-go. And then you don't have, you see so often with other teams where your veterans, you bring in a veteran core, and then by January, 3 or 4 of them are up with the big team, and so like that's where you start seeing those huge leadership gaps. This is I think a much better approach that the Rocket and the Habs have taken really solidifying that veteran core. So, like you mentioned, like a guy like Jelena, certainly Wotherspoon, you go right down the list. They should be in pretty good hands this year, I think. I think they got that veteran situation squared away.
I know Amy's got a question for you, but I think what you said there is really important, really insightful. And I just want to read a quote from Eric Jelena that follows along exactly with what you just said about his last stint with Laval. He says, "I was really hoping to get called up by the Canadiens. It was tough to swallow that it didn't work out. So I went to Europe and got back into hockey." About this chance that he has, he says, "They're looking for me to be a mentor. I'm not going to hope for a recall or anything. That's not what I want anymore. What I want is to perform well, help out, and play my game." So that's exactly what you said, and that's the kind of veteran support that Laval really is going to need this year.
Yeah, and I was speaking with Michael Mersch. Laval fans might know him. He was captain of Rochester the past few years. Mm-hmm. He just retired.
Just retired, yeah.
We were kind of talking about his whole career and how there's those different stages where you go from prospect to what am I exactly to I'm a veteran, right? And he was saying that once he came to Rochester, he came on an AHL deal. Like, it took a ton of pressure off him. Like, he could just go out and play. Like, he wasn't every game, worrying about, okay, why didn't I get called up? I had a really good week. I didn't call up. What does that mean? Da da da. Like, you can just almost have fun again, right? And not have that whole NHL pressure hanging over you. And I think that's what you want for your veteran guys, where they can just really focus on mentorship and also just producing, right? Like, yeah. That's the other thing with veterans. We're always talking about leadership. Well, you also need guys that can just come in and play, with an experienced hand. So that I think is a huge part of things for when you get into those situations where you're really counting on some of your older guys to help the younger kids find their way.
Let me what I want to ask you kind of sort of ties in with that in a big way. And this was something I actually first brought up on Rocket Hockey Report on our YouTube channel this week. And if anyone missed that episode, be sure to head over to InsideTheCanadiens.com, check out the most recent Rocket Hockey Report. But so last year we knew that the Canadiens, there was going to be an influx of prospects and that the Laval Rocket team was going to get much younger last year. And we knew that was going to come with some adjustment time at the beginning, and ended up being a lot more. That adjustment was very significant and lasted a lot longer than I think they were expecting, but knew that was going to happen. Well, this year, just doing a little bit of digging, realized that the average age of the Laval Rocket roster this year is actually going to be younger than last year's, just by just a little bit. In fact, it's going to be the youngest roster that the Laval Rocket have had in their 7-year history. Just by a smidge, but still, it's that they're a little bit younger. And so I want to ask you, you can agree or disagree. I just want your take on this. People, I think, after last year, how the start went for the first 3 months of the season, might be a little hesitant when they hear, oh boy, they're getting younger again this year. But I think that there's a key difference for the Laval Rocket and their fans this year. I think that even though they might have gotten slightly younger, I think the comprehensive talent level on this year's roster is not just a little bit, but significantly better than last year's. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree 100%. You start right off the bat, like you looked at like last year, your goaltending was very much up in the air for the first few months of the year. Now you have Dobish, who can come in, and he already has a year under his belt, and we're really more than a year away. I mean, he was, such a busy workload last year. Like, he's it was almost like really like 1.5 seasons he got under his belt.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. I mean, felt like every time you turned around, he was in net. So that's really good. And then yeah, now like, it depends on how the roster will shake out, and not just coming out of training camp, but throughout the course of the season. Like, you have a guy like Mayu, like he'll come back. He's that much more experienced. If he depending on what they do, you're bringing like Dauphin, who is obviously we know what he is, but then you have guys like Farrell and Heineman and Kidney and right on down the list, who now have had, they don't have to go through that whole first 3-month adjustment period to the AHL that they had to go through last year, or so like they know what to expect now. They're coming in, they know what this league is about. They know what it takes, and you really do sort of eliminate a lot of that learning curve. So I think, depending, you want to crunch the numbers, and it's a little bit younger, but I think it's more experienced in the right places, and the real key parts of your lineup that you want to have that experience. I think they have a fair amount more. So I would 100% agree with you that this in a lot of ways should be a much more polished team than last year, which as we talked about every week for that first half, it was rough.
It was.
There's no getting around that. There was I think to their credit, like the fact that they came down to the final week of the season was remarkable, considering how like December, January-ish they were well on their way to being out of contention altogether. So
right.
They really got their act together and have gotten it squared away.
And there'll be some exciting new talent. Owen Beck, Philip Meshar, Luke Tuck are all going to be an injection of energy with high skill and ceiling on an upside. So I think I like what you say there. I think it's going to be an exciting year for Laval.
Yeah, and I think in addition to very exciting with Owen Beck, all these young first-year players, Machar, Tuck, Xhekaj, there's that second set of players who have been around a year, like a Riley Kidney or a Jared Davidson, even a Sean Farrell, who kind of, I think the coach last year had kind of made his mind up about those players. But these guys get a fresh start, I think, in the eyes of a brand new coach, head coach, and assistant coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just so much. You have management; they've been together that much longer. Right. Even Marty St. Louis, like he's that much more situated behind the net or behind the bench for the Habs, and I think that everybody's more on the same page, and everybody there's a lot more cohesion than there was last year. And as with anything, sometimes there's just no replacement for just for time, and they've been able to put that time in now. And I think now is when you'll start to be able to harvest some of those benefits now this season.
Well, Patrik, I think that you have successfully gotten our listeners revved up and amped up and hyped up and ready to go for that's right, for a really, really exciting Laval Rockets season. I know I'm thrilled that we've gotten the first appearance with you on Canadiens Connection in the books already for the season. We'll have you back many more times here and on the YouTube channel for Rocket Hockey Report. Thank you so much once again for being here. If you are not following Patrik, be sure to follow him on X at PWilliamsAHL. And Patrik, thank you so much, as always, for being here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you once again to Patrik for joining us here on the show. You will hear him many more times throughout this season, both here on the Canadiens Connection, and he likes to make appearances on our YouTube channel on the Rocket Hockey Report as well. So always happy to have Patrik as part of the crew here at Rocket Sports, and an exciting season coming up for his AHL coverage, to be sure.
And do you need to go anywhere else for your AHL coverage? Here you have Amy Johnson, Chris G, Patrick Williams. It's tremendous.
Well, we appreciate it, and we enjoy covering the Habs prospects playing in the American League. Chris also does a really great job in covering the Habs prospects playing in the ECHL for the Trois-Rivières Lions. So you can count on him bringing that kind of information this season as well. You'll find all of our content about Canadiens prospects over on our Rocket Sports YouTube account. Just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com, and we'll be sure to keep you in tap with everything happening with Canadiens prospects playing pro hockey in the AHL and the ECHL. Now, a few moments ago, we asked the question, who can replace Patrik Laine? And this week on Pierre Maguire's edition of the Sick podcast called The Eye Test, they were joined. Actually, before we get to that,
that was a tease.
It was a tease. We're gonna talk about who Pierre Maguire spoke with to maybe answer that question in a minute. But before we get there, Marty St. Louis was asked today about Emil Heineman, who is someone. I have been pumping the Emil Heineman tires on our YouTube channel for the last couple of weeks and even last season as well. And I said in kind of the top prospects to watch video on our YouTube channel, Emil Heineman, I think he's a very understated player. He's really grown a lot this past season playing in Laval, and I think that he has very quietly had a very good camp. And here's what Marty St. Louis said today about Emil Heineman.
I think he's right in there. I mean, I think he's taken a step. Everything the way he moves on the ice, everything, it just looks better than before. I think it's the maturity, you know, the 1 year under his belt in North America. Like, you know, you saw his tools last year, but I feel like everything is more connected, you know, with how he's using his tools. Like it's, you know, so to me, that's just maturity.
Yeah. So could he be part of the solution to filling the void left by Patrik Laine for the first part of the season? And I mean, Marty's not giving any hints about where they're leaning, but says, yeah, certainly he's part of the conversation, and then goes on to say why about, and it has mostly to do with, yeah, he had all the tools last year, but that they've all come together and a very complete player. We're going to hear that said again, a more complete player this season because of having that experience.
That's right. So, as I just teased a moment ago, Pierre Maguire on his The Eye Test Sick podcast had Jeff Gorton on, and he had some comments on a young man who also could be in the conversation, as Marty said, on being a potential replacement for Patrik Laine.
Well, I mean, Oliver Kapanen right away is a guy that's come in here and played really well and opened our eyes. And, you know, we have a situation with him where we have him for camp. And then if he doesn't make our team, he's got to go back to Sweden. So, you know, we'll probably we'll keep him as long as we can to make that decision. Try to get him in some of these games that we're finishing off with here in the next week.
So, you know, an open-ended question. Pierre asked who can replace Patrik Laine, and Jeff Gorton says, well, Oliver Kapanen's in the mix, and goes on to say why his situation is different, because once you commit to him, he's with the club the entire year. He's, you know, either with the Canadiens or back or to the SHL with Timrå. So as explained by Jeff Gorton there, but that he's a player that really opened the eyes of management.
Well, and Kent Hughes took that even further in an interview that he did with Marc-Antoine Gaudin, who had asked Kent, what has struck you in Oliver Kapanen's game this training camp? Kent Hughes replied, quote, he's very detailed. He's very complete. There's that complete. He's confident. You can see that he's had a lot of experience in the pro leagues and the world championship. He came here to make the team, meaning make the Canadiens. And that's a pretty strong statement as well from Kent Hughes.
So you know who they're keeping, right? No,
that's just it.
We have no idea, but they have some pretty good choices in both. We talked about maybe some of the regulars, some of the younger players moving up, and some shuffling of the lines, or in two young players, given namely Emil Heineman and Oliver Kapanen.
Absolutely. All right. Moving to the NHL in general, before I know everyone is waiting for the big predictions, the 10 big predictions, and we're going to get there in just a moment. First, though, let's touch on some NHL news. The Vegas Golden, and some of this news has to do with former Canadiens, and let's talk about Tanner Pearson. You remember him? Well, the Vegas Golden Knights announced on Friday that they have signed Tanner Pearson to a 1-year contract worth $775,000.
Good for Tanner Pearson, a nice guy, a good locker room veteran. He came to Vegas on a PTO, and now that's been converted into a contract. Well done.
We like being able to live NHL history, and history has been made this week with the Utah Hockey Club naming their first ever captain in franchise history on Friday, Rick.
Well, they're doing things different in Utah than they did with Arizona. The Arizona Coyotes hadn't have a captain for 3 years, I think. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and he went to Vancouver in 2021. So they haven't had a captain since then. Clayton Keller has been an alternate, though was an alternate for Arizona. Now the first ever captain for Utah. And they're doing some things right there. I really like you. It was you that sent me the menu, the prices on the menu items.
Good on the fan-friendly concessions.
Yeah. Wow.
It's fantastic.
It is.
Every single game for a Utah Hockey Club NHL game, they have got a separate concession list called family-friendly or fan-friendly concessions. And it's your basics, the things that adults and kids just want, like popcorn, nachos, hot dogs. And you're talking $2, maybe $3 for each of these things. There's like 5 or 6 things on the list. It's like prices that you could get at an AHL rink for your most basic concessions. I think every stinking franchise in the NHL should follow that model and do that.
Yeah, like a value menu, more or less.
Have your fancy burgers and your fancy sandwiches and your beer revenue and all of that kind of stuff. That's fine. But also particularly given how expensive NHL tickets are, give families a way to be able to, just have some inexpensive, good stadium snacks, arena snacks.
Got to get that doorbell because my snacks are being delivered to the studio.
Oh, what are we having? It better be nachos. Because
you complained in the pre-show that the new studio is lovely, but it's a severe lack of snacks.
Yeah, I kind of forgot to eat lunch because I was prepping for this, and so I'm hungry. So if there's nachos, I want them. So yes, good on Utah Hockey Club. Never, always hate when we start a season with news that one of the NHL's players is entering the NHLPA Player Assistant Program, but that is going to be the case for Jack Campbell. He's going to be away from the Detroit Red Wings indefinitely. And while we never like to hear about players entering the Player Assistant Program, I am at the same time grateful that players take advantage of this program. And anyone who enters that program, I just wish you the best of luck with whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah, I'll echo that. And yes, we can't assume what it's about, but thankfully that program is there and can provide assistance and support.
Definitely. This is something we are just going to mention in passing because I'm gonna go ahead and wager that this is going to be a major topic we're going to talk about in sometime within the next month. But looks like there is going to be a major NCAA hockey player eligibility decision coming up sometime this month. Multiple reports have been pouring out recently, and most recently, even in the last 24 hours, that a lot of reporters and analysts and even agents and so forth are hearing from credible sources that the NCAA is very close to making a decision on allowing eligibility for CHL players, and it could take effect almost immediately, as in now. So there are a ton of questions coming out about it. There will be a lot of ramifications. And so I think before everyone kind of jumps off the end of the pier about it, I think we have to wait to hear what the decision is going to be and what the rules and regulations and the guidelines are going to be. And then we can evaluate the facts at that point.
But it sounds like it's going to be big. It's going to a vote. Apparently, it's been leaked on Monday. And we've talked about this at various points, that it was coming, that it was canceled, that over the last year. And this was supposed to be about the ease of movement for players, CHL players, Canadian junior players, to find their way to the NCAA. Now the kinds of questions that are being thrown out, they kind of bring into question the commitments that have already been made by NCAA teams to players down the road. When commitments are made, they're not necessarily made for the current year. They're made for future years or scholarship implications. And November, the signing period, could be an absolute frenzy. So we're just letting you know something's coming early, likely in the week, and we'll break it down in next week's show.
Absolutely. One last thing before we head to our first commercial break, and then, of course, get into our big predictions for the Canadian season. Is a little bit of news around the Columbus Blue Jackets. And this was a very sensitive topic for the NHL and the NHLPA and the Columbus Blue Jackets to get into, and that is the salary cap floor with the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau. Remember, every team has a salary cap floor that they have to meet, not ceiling, but a floor. There has to be a minimum. Well, the Blue Jackets have been informed by the NHL and the NHLPA that they won't need to be compliant with that salary cap floor by October 7th, which is normally when a team would need to be compliant when the NHL clubs set their rosters for the season. And I think, Rick, I think that is... A, I think it's common sense. B, I think that should have been a no-brainer. And thankfully, the league made the right move there, because I think it would be unduly unfair to Columbus to try to solve that problem by the start of the season.
Yeah, I think this is there. There are times when there are rules, and there are times when the rules have to be massaged a bit, and good on Columbus and the NHL and the NHLPA to come to some sort of reasonable agreement. Obviously, Columbus was going to be above the cap floor with Johnny Gaudreau's salary factored in and below because of his passing. And I think, a reasonable time is open-ended, but I think that Columbus has some injuries as well, and they have to deal with that, but you'll see them start signing some veterans. And we saw that on Saturday morning where they signed veteran Kevin Labanc. I think it was for league minimum, so still probably won't get them. They're probably $1.5 million short on the floor, but looks like they're pushing to get there, and graciously or common sense wise, the NHL and the NHLPA are going to give them the time they need.
Definitely. All right, we're going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. First up, we're going to hear from our good friends and sponsors over at DraftKings. They have a brand new incentive centered around hockey season for our listeners and viewers, so you're going to want to check that out. Then when we come back, Rick and I are going to lay down our big predictions, both for the Canadian season and some league-wide predictions as well. And we have got not one, but two big questions of the week for all of you to answer. You are not going to want to miss that. So stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 2024-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking your favorite team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. I am Amy Johnson. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, feel free to do so. You can find me at Flyers Rule. And if you're new to the show, fear not. The Flyers in my name simply is because I live in Pennsylvania. So when I'm not being a Montreal Canadiens journalist, I'm a fan of the Philadelphia Flyers. So you can find me at Flyers Rule. And of course, with me in our studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Make sure you're following him on Twitter and X as well, at Rocket Sports. And you can also follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast. The easiest way to do that is just to go to the podcast website at canadiensconnection.fm, and it'll give you a full list of all of the different podcast apps that you can find us on. Find the one that you like the most, tap that, and then hit subscribe. And if you are watching on YouTube, you know it's really easy. Just tap that subscribe button right there on the YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you don't ever miss a video when we publish them. The podcast comes out every Monday on YouTube. Rocket Hockey Report comes out, hosted by me, comes out on Tuesdays, as well as my show, Habs Hockey Report, which comes out on Thursdays. All right, so preseason is just about wrapped up. There's not much time left until the Canadiens drop the puck on the 2024-25 regular season. So it is time to make our prognostications, because we totally take this seriously and we totally roast each other at the end of every season for how many we get right and how many we get wrong. And so in this segment, we are going to unveil our top 10 predictions for the 2024-25 NHL season. We've got for the Montreal Canadiens, and we've also got some NHL predictions that we're going to do as well. And I did mention that we have 2 questions of the week for all of you out there. I will give you one of them to start thinking about now, and I'll tell you the other one at the end of this segment. So first and foremost, one of the things we want to hear from you is who, since we just got done talking about preseason, who has impressed you and who hasn't impressed you for the Montreal Canadiens in the preseason? Who has impressed you and who hasn't impressed you for the Canadiens during their preseason? Send us a text at 585-3-ROCKET or drop a comment down in the YouTube channel. Send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Let us know. Let's get this started. Let's get this underway. Our first prediction. Who will lead the Canadiens in points this season? And how many points will they record? I'll simply remind everyone, last year, this went to Nick Suzuki, who led the team with 77 points last year. So, Rick, who do you believe is going to lead the Canadiens in points this year, and how many points will they have?
Well,
I should
go ahead.
Hold on. I should mention that we have not discussed our answers for this.
No, we haven't.
So we will both be finding out our predictions At the same time, all of you are.
Your reactions will be genuine.
Yes.
This is kind of you ease into these predictions. So this one should be easy. And I hate saying that because as soon as you say that, then something happens.
Watch what you say.
Yeah, I'm not gonna wish that on anyone. But if all goes as it should, it's Nick Suzuki that's going to lead the Montreal Canadiens in points, as he's done for the last few seasons. And with the question, how many points will he get in leading the Canadiens? I'm going to leave it up to Nick Suzuki to answer that. And he has said in multiple availabilities this preseason that his goal is a point per game. He is committed to scoring a point per game. He fell just a little short last season with 77 points. So I'm going to say that Nick Suzuki is going to get to that point a game per pace and add one for good measure. So I'm predicting 83 points for Nick Suzuki this season.
Well, all right. If you want to ease into things, then I guess we have to agree for our first prediction, because I also say that it'll be Nick Suzuki again. But I'm going to give him just slightly bit more leeway. I'm going to say he's going to score 85 points.
All right.
I think he's just going to, maybe he's going to have a hat trick in there one game.
A couple.
Yeah. Suzuki, 83 points for you, 85 points for me. All right. Question number 2. And for those of you listening and watching, feel free, grab a notebook, number 1 to 10, and write down your answers as well, and then tuck them away somewhere where you can pull it out when we come back to these
under the couch cushion
April to see how we did. So follow along. So put down your answer for that, number 1. Number 2, who will provide the offense this season for the Canadiens? This is actually a 3-part question. So see, we're actually getting more than 10 predictions if you really count. But so this question is all about providing the offense this season for the Canadiens. So we're going to start with, will Cole Caulfield score more or less than 35 goals this season? Last year, in the 82 games he played, he had 28 goals. Will he score more or less than 35 goals this season, Rick?
Yeah, it's all about his shooting percentage, and it dropped dramatically last season. And partly, yes, he had the shoulder surgery. Yes, he was healed and ready to go. But I mentioned Dr. Stephen Morris, our medical expert. We had a show focused on this. I think it was in December last year of some research that's been done that after that shoulder surgery, it takes a season and a bit for players to return to the level. Just the mechanics of how the shoulder is works with the way you shoot. So will he score more than 35 goals? I'll say yes. 28 goals last season, and yes, he will. Because of the research, I will say that his shooting percentage will return to something more normal, and he'll score more than 35 goals.
Do you want to put a number on that, or no?
Yeah. All right. I
did the extra credit.
You?
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay. Uh-huh. I don't think he gets to 40.
Okay.
I don't think he gets to 40 unless the Canadiens' power play really, really takes off. But I think more than 35.
So
38.
More than 38? Is that what you're saying?
All right.
Okay. See, people, we're holding them to these things. We want hard facts.
All right.
I also stop copying my answers. I also said he'll score more, and you just tried to one up me because I believe he'll be at 37. I also agree. I still don't think he's going to hit the 40 goal mark this year. And the power play is a big part of that. So I say 37. Part B of this question is, will Juraj Slafkovský tally more or less than 65 points in the NHL this season? Now, he also played 82 games last year. He had 50 points last year. So the question is, will Juraj Slafkovský tally more or less than 65 points in the NHL this season, Rick?
No. And again, that's based on the research that says that there's a little bit of a backslide in the third year for most players that you consider top draft picks. That there's a bit of a backslide, and part of that I think is also that, especially with Patrik Laine, teams would have had to have defended both top lines, the first and second line of the Canadiens. Now they can focus, and if Slafkovský spends most of the time on the first line, there'll be extra attention to it, and or the other possibility is that he gets bumped around a bit from the second line to the first line, and that might affect his confidence. All of that says that yes, he'll have more than he had last year, but he was on a 70 point pace that second half of last season. So I'm looking at that 70 points and moving back from that as far as his pace and putting him at 64 points this year. A long explanation, I know.
All right. That's okay. I went back and forth on this one.
Yeah, it is a tough one.
Quite a bit, actually. And I'm going to have to go more. I'm going to have to say that whether he stays on the top line, I think if I'm predicting that Suzuki's going to have more points this year, and if I'm predicting that Caulfield's going to have more goals this year, I think that automatically then means that Slafkovsky's going to have more production as well. I think the chemistry with those three is going to heat up, and even if he gets put on the second line, it would be my hope that chemistry that he has had flashes of with Doc would also come back as well. So I don't think he's going to go much higher than 65. I don't know that he's going to hit the 70, but I'm going to say 68 points.
Okay.
So we're close. You're going less, I'm going more, but we're only off by 4 points.
All right.
Part C of this question is, will Kirby Dach set a career high in points this season? Now, his career high is currently the 2022-23 season when he had 38 points. Remember, Kirby Dach has battled a lot of injuries in his young career. So is this the year that he sets a career high in points, Rick?
Yes. Yeah, more than 40 points. I'm going to be specific on the number of games he plays.
Okay.
77 games for number 77 this year.
77 games.
For the number 77 Kirby Dach.
Okay.
And crossing my fingers and knocking on wood and all of that.
And do you have how many points that you think?
More than 40 points.
More than 40. Okay. I also say he's going to hit his career high this year. I put a number on it at 44. So we'll see. So that is all question number 2. All right, this should be a fun one. Question number 3 is a fun one. This is also going to be a 3-parter question. Over or under? Last year, Arbor Jacki had played 44 games in the NHL and he had 81 penalty minutes. Will he have 100 penalty minutes in the NHL this year?
This one is tough. This one's really tough because it all depends on where he plays this season. Mm-hmm. If he plays in the NHL and he'll play, I'm assuming that he's going to play the majority of his games, more than 44 in the NHL, that yes, he'll have more than 100 penalty minutes.
Okay. Did you want to put a number to that? Or
No.
No? I also say that he's going to have over 100. I'm going to go with 117.
All right.
117 penalty minutes for Arber, I think, this year. Now, the second part of this question goes off of what you were just saying. Will Arber play in Laval this season?
Yes.
I agree. I think he is going to spend time in Laval. And it's very possible that he starts the season there. Because Jaden Struble is fighting for Arber Jackey's job, and right now
Jaden Struble's had a terrific camp.
Yes, he is. Yes, he has. And they know what they're getting with Jaden Struble. He's had from his play last year, he's had a very strong camp. And while Arber has done some commendable things on the ice so far in preseason in terms of sticking up for teammates, he's also taken things too far a little bit and not shown restraint when he needed to. And so I think Saturday night's a big game for Arber Xhekaj. I think he's one of the guys that's worried about his job. So we'll see. But yes, we both agree that he will probably play in Laval for some amount of time at some point this season. Finally, in this question, whether it's in the NHL or the AHL, will Arber get a suspension this season?
Yes. I think he has been fortunate that he hasn't been suspended, that he wasn't suspended, and we talked about that already. I think that the reason that he will is that he's being put in a really difficult position, that he's expected to stand up for his teammates. His teammates love that. His coach loves that. But his coach doesn't love his lack of discipline. And that was the reason he was sent to Laval last year, and to work on his defensive game. But it was mostly for, and it wasn't that he was getting involved in a lot of fights last year. It was his minor penalties that were out of control last year. So I think that the pressure from all sides that's being put on, whether it's fan pressure, zone pressure, whatever, that's going to cause him to do something either in his stint in the AHL or in the NHL to be suspended. And I think that, the league also takes into account that he narrowly missed a suspension in the preseason. So I will say yes.
I'm going to say no on this one, because I think that I think coaching and management are going to remind him, if they haven't done so already after Tuesday's game, that was a big part of the reason why he went to Laval last year. And I think what I appreciated about Arber last year was, after that humbling experience for him to go to the AHL for a little while, he came back to Montreal and he was a bit of a different kind of tough guy. And he was a bit reserved in his first few games, and he kind of kept things a little more in check the second half of the season in Montreal. And I'm going to bank on the fact that maybe he'll find that again if he's given a stern enough warning from internal communications. And
Arber listens.
He does.
You mentioned about him coming up from Laval, going down to Laval. He was talked about the lack of discipline, and we know that a lot of the Rocket fans last year were expecting him to come down and fight a lot, and
he didn't.
No. I think he had two. Well, we can check that, but I think he had 2 fights in the AHL last year.
He was very disciplined.
He was very disciplined.
He was, and he played very well with Logan Mailloux.
He did.
All right, moving to question number 4. Will Sam Montembeault win more or less than 21 games this season? Now, keep in mind, last year he had 16 wins, ending up 35th in the NHL. So will he win more or less than 21 games this season?
I say more. And listen, he hasn't cracked the 20-win mark. The 20-win mark only gets you into the top 25 club in terms of goaltenders. So it's not, it's not a big achievement. And I think the expectation is that Sam Montembeault needs to take control of the number 1 position. He says he wants to have more than 50 starts. and that and he's going to be in his own mind auditioning for the Four Nations Cup and all those kinds of things that I think Sam Montembeault, this is a big year for Sam Montembeault, and he gets all kinds of praise, and I think he has to deliver the goods this season, and that means winning more than 21 games.
Do you have an idea of how many games he's going to win?
I will say 22 games.
Okay. I agree with you on the more. I think he's going to play. I think he will win more games than 21. And I think I agree with what you've said there about his mindset for this season, but I also feel it's more about the team in front of him this year, particularly the pieces of the puzzle in defense, which I think are going to bail him out a little bit more. And I say he's going to win 23 games.
All right.
This is a fun question. Question number 5. Who will play more games for the Canadiens this season? Emil Heineman, Oliver Kapanen, Alex Barré-Boulet, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, or Michael Pezzetta? I'll read those again for those playing at home. Who will play more games for the Canadiens this season? Emil Heineman, Oliver Kapanen, Alex Barré-Boulet, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, or Michael Pezzetta?
I don't know who the quizmaster is, but these questions are really, really tough.
I did not come up with these questions.
So I guess I did. This is one of these predictions that can make you look smarter or dumb, because Oliver Kapanen, as we explained, is an all or nothing thing. He's either going to have 0 games or he's going to have plenty of games. So that's a difficult call. Alex Barré-Boulet he's a career AHL player. In the Tampa organization, he was always one of the final cuts, but he was always a cut that went to Syracuse. And you see him when he plays, he's got some offensive skill. He doesn't like to get involved in traffic. He doesn't like to come back too hard in the defensive zone. And he seems on cruise control a lot of the time, although when he played the Rocket, he was a bit of a rocket killer, and he has the ability to turn up his effort, but his effort level is very inconsistent, and I don't know if Marty St. Louis puts up with that. Raphael Harvey-Pinard is injured, and we'll see, how many games he can play. He had a difficult season last year between injuries, and then when he was in the lineup, he didn't produce. Michael Pezzetta, we've talked about whether he's part of does he belong anymore for a team that's trying to work itself into contention, but a likable guy. I'm going to go with Emil Heineman. And this, like I've tried to explain, this could go in many different directions. But I think Emil Heineman is ready. And I think that once he gets in the lineup, he can stick. And so, I'm going to go out on a limb for Emil Heineman here.
I agree this is a difficult question. So I kind of have like a 3-part answer. And it's almost basically identical. I think if Kapanen stays, then it's going to be Kapanen.
Yeah.
End of story. If Kapanen doesn't stay with the Canadiens, I fear it's going to be Alex Barré-Boulet. But if I had my druthers of who I would like it to be, it would be Heineman, because I just got done talking about how much I've been pumping his tires. So I'm just, those are my 3 rationales. I'm going to go out. I'm going to say they're going to keep Kapanen. I'm going to say it's going to be Kapanen.
All right.
All right. We're going to move through question number 6 here kind of quickly, because this is kind of like just a yes or no. Which of the following Habs UFAs are going to be traded by the NHL trade deadline? So I'm going to list some guys. We're going to say, yes, they'll be traded by the deadline this year. No, they won't. David Savard.
Yes.
I say no.
Yeah, you can make that case.
he should be traded. I don't think they will.
Guess I'm hopeful. Go ahead.
Yeah. Christian Dvorak.
No.
See, I think Devo goes.
All right.
We're totally in sync here. Yoel Armia.
No.
Okay, we're the same on that one. I don't think they're going to get rid of Armia either. Jake Evans.
No.
I think Jake Evans, I'm going to say yes. I think Jake Evans, like Jordan Harris, turned into, a player who has value that they could move and use as a trade chip because, there was getting to be too many defense. I think Jake Evans is going to I think he's going to fall into that category, and he's going to be one of the expendable ones. And
Jake Evans, to follow your point, has value, and he would have value for a playoff bound team.
Mm-hmm.
I just see Yoel Armia and Jake Evans as their top two penalty killers, and they
True.
have a commitment to improving their special teams. So that's why I see them staying put.
Okay. And Michael Pezzetta.
He won't be traded. No. Will they lose him on waivers or maybe, but he won't be traded.
Okay. I agree with you there. So you had said yes on David Savard and no on the other four.
Right.
Okay. And I said yes on Dvorak and Evans and no on the other three.
All right.
Question number 7. Will Lane Hutson win the Calder Memorial Trophy this year? Connor Bedard won it last year. Will Lane Hutson win it this year?
No. He's going to be, again, we're using in the mix, in the conversation, whatever you want to use. It's, I think the top candidates, unfortunately, Flyers, Matvei Michkov, that's going to cause all kinds of angst for Canadiens fans. Macklin Celebrini and Logan Stankoven in Dallas, maybe even Cutter Gauthier. But I think, it looks like that Lane Hutson is not going to get, not immediately anyway, get an opportunity to be on the top power play, and he'd need that to get to, say, 55 points that one of the other players is going to get to on this list. So unfortunately, no, I don't think he's going to win the Calder.
I do agree that there's a lot working against him, but I am going to say yes, just for the sake of saying yes.
I like the optimism.
Yeah. All right. Number 8, special teams. Last year, the Canadiens were 27th on the power play and 24th on the PK. Can they be top 20 in each category this year?
They kind of have to be, because Marty staked his reputation. Like he was more or less looking after the power play last year in the background, but he's come out and said, this power play is mine. And I think they have to, if they're going to make progress at all, they have to be top 20. And I mean, just getting into the top 20 doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be a playoff team. We talked about that, the 100 rule, adding the percentages, the percentage efficiencies of your power play and your PK last week, and how that's a good predictor of being in the playoff mix. But I think Marty's going to insist on their power play and their PK making a difference this season.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say possibly the PK gets in the top 20, but I think the power play still falls short.
All right.
Because I think that I haven't seen anything in preseason yet that convinces me that Marty is going to be the answer to the power play. And so
0 for 25 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to say no, that they are not going to be top 20 in each category. You mentioned meeting the 100 rule. Do you think that they do that? Yeah, this is just yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. I say no if I don't even think they can be top 20 in each category. Question number 9. Will Ivan Demidov score 20 goals for SKA St. Petersburg this season?
Yes.
Do you want to
elaborate? I think that.
No, do you want to put a number on it?
Yeah, I think he's 22 goals thereabouts. He's on pace right now. I said he had 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points in 11 games. That's on a pace for 25 goals, 25 assists, 50 points. So I put him at 22. This whole thing, he's being taught a lesson, obviously early on. It's all going to sort itself out. He's a talented player. He'll learn. Even Jason Bukala talks about his defensive mistakes and lapses. He's going to learn. He's going to get better. And that offensive talent, the team is going to need him to provide part of their offense. So yes, I think he's going to score more than 20 goals.
I agree. I'm going to give him even more. I'm going to say that he's going to score 26 this year with SKA St. Petersburg.
All right.
All right, question number 10. The Athletic projects that the Canadiens will finish 27th this season with 80.6 points and have a 7% chance of making the playoffs. So, last year they finished with 76 points, 28th in the standings. I'm going to break this into a couple of parts. First off, Rick, will the Canadiens finish the season with more or less than 82 points?
And I should say that 80.6 point projection by the Athletic includes Patrik Laine being out for half the season.
Okay,
that's kind of the adjustment that they made. How many points do they get? I think 83 points.
So you think they'll be more than 82 with 83 points? I say more with 84 points. Given that, so where do you think they finish in the standings? They were 28th last year. Where do you think they finished this year?
They're still a bottom 10 team. I put them 14th of 16 teams in the East. That places them above 2 teams in the East. And I'll get to that in a minute.
So where does that in the
bottom 10 team?
Oh, okay. So bottom 10. I'm putting them at 24th.
Okay.
And will the Laval Rocket make the playoffs this season? They finished last in the North Division last year. Just missed the playoffs. Will they make the playoffs this season?
Yes. They have to. They've got a ton of talent. Offensively and defensively, they got a lot of talent. They have a new coach. And we should, if for fans, if they're not following the AHL, it's easier to make the playoffs in the AHL. 23 teams, 23 of the 32 teams make the playoffs. That's 72% of the teams make the playoffs. So it's tough not to make the playoffs in the AHL.
I am going to agree and add in there too that Jakub Dobeš is going to build on the season that he finished last year. I think he's going to be great in the net for them. So yes, I believe they make the playoffs. I think they end 3rd in the North Division heading into the playoffs for this season. We have a bonus question. You didn't think we were stopping at 10, did you?
All right.
Bonus question. Who finishes higher in the standings this season, the Montreal Canadiens or the Philadelphia Flyers?
This is fun because...
and I didn't even write this question.
No. Well, it's just fun because there's a bit of a... Yeah, this pot's being stirred. A bit of a rivalry renewed. We talked about that. You've been on Flyers podcast, ask the question, why is this rivalry being renewed? There's focus on Michkov. There would have been focus on Reinbacher had he wherever he had played this year. I have the Canadiens 14 out of 16 teams in the East, and I've gone back and forth. I think Columbus is going to be below Montreal, and it's either going to be Ottawa that's below Montreal or Philadelphia. I'm not convinced by the rebuild in Philadelphia. I wonder about a lot of things. But for the sake of this fueling the rivalry here, I'll say that the Canadiens finish ahead of Philadelphia for this purpose.
Well, seeing as I'm doing this podcast as a journalist and not a fan, have to put my fandom aside and agree with you. Sorry, Flyers. I do think the Canadiens finish higher in the standings. Torts even said it himself this week that there's a lot of work to do and that the goaltending situation in Philadelphia scares him.
Yes.
That's not, that's not just dropping a bomb on things with coach saying that. And I have to agree with him. And it's not, he basically backed that up by saying, it's not that Samuel Ersson scares me. It's that this is his first crack at being the guy. Mm-hmm. And that's a big task to step into. And so, I think there's some things that they're going to need help with. And so I'm going to say the Canadiens here. All right. Well, we can't finish our predictions that you're all playing along with at home without doing some NHL predictions. We've got 5 quick NHL predictions for you. The first one, I always love this one. And you were right on with this last year. Yeah. I'll give you credit. Who's going to be the first coach fired this season?
Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh.
Stop looking at my answers.
Oh, really?
I had been there a decade.
Yeah, I had Travis Green just because, why not take a shot at Ottawa? But Mike Sullivan is, he's been there a while, and there's been some tension with the new GM, Kyle Dubas. Things done a little differently in the past. His connection to Crosby and Mulliken and everything that will keep him there. But no, I'm gonna say Mike Sullivan.
That's who I have, and that has nothing to do with me being a Flyers fan. Sure. Who's going to win the Vezina this year?
Well, I think Shesterkin is a shoo-in, but I really, really like Jake Ottinger, and I'm going to go with the Minneapolis goaltender because we like Minneapolis goaltenders, don't we, Charlie? Lindgren? Jake Ottinger.
Well, shame on you. I'm taking who should have been your pick, Connor Hellebuck.
Alrighty.
I'm going to take Winnipeg, I think, is sneakily getting stronger, and I'm going to take Hellebuck. Will Alex Ovechkin break Gretzky's goal-scoring record this season? He needs 42 goals to do it, and he had 31 last season.
894 is the mark, of course, set by Wayne Gretzky. Thought almost impossible to break. No, not this season.
No, not this season. I agree, and I actually think he's only going to have. I'm saying he's got 27 goals this season. I think he goes even less than he had last year.
All right.
I know he's trying to be Jaromir Jagr, but there is no other Jagr.
That's true.
Who's got the best odds of winning the draft lottery?
San Jose.
Okay. I am going to give San Jose props that Macklin Celebrini is going to help them out, and I think it's going to be the Anaheim Ducks.
All right.
I think the Ducks are going to struggle the mightiest. All right, and here it is for all of us, if you're still playing
Ducks.
At home.
Did you get that? Yeah.
I crack myself up. I have to crack myself up, people. Who are going to be the 2 teams in this year's Stanley Cup final, and which one is going to win it?
Final's going to be Dallas Stars versus the New York Rangers, and Dallas is going to win the Stanley Cup.
He cheats, people, because I'm telling you, he has snuck a peek at my answers.
I didn't. I have no idea.
And he's strategizing off of them. Because I also believe the New York Rangers are going to be in the final.
Okay.
And I also believe that they're going to lose.
All right.
I just say that it's going to be Winnipeg.
Oh, nice. All right. A Canadian team.
A Canadian team.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Jets, Rangers. And I think the Jets are going to do it. And this is like the 3rd year in a row that I have said the Jets are going to win the Stanley Cup. And I don't know why I keep thinking they're going to win the Stanley Cup, but maybe it'll happen. So there you have it. There are our predictions for the Canadiens and for the NHL for the 2024-25 season. I hope you wrote down your answers as well. If you didn't, just rewind, hit hit the replay once you're done listening to the podcast. And jot your answers down and tuck them away someplace safe where you'll know you can find them, because we're going to pull them out again towards the end of the season and see how we did.
And also send them to us. We want to hear what your predictions are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while you're at it, don't forget, part 1 of this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week for you is, who has impressed you in Canadiens preseason and who hasn't? And we'll also give you this bonus question as well. Let you make a big prediction. Where do you think the Canadiens were going to finish in the standings this season? Let us know. Drop us a comment in YouTube if that's where you're watching, or send us a text at 585-3-ROCKET, or send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Habs Connection. We want to hear from you. Who has impressed you and who hasn't in Montreal Canadiens preseason? And where do you think the Canadiens are going to finish in the NHL standings this year? We are going to take our final break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. If you didn't know, this podcast is actually also sponsored by BetterHelp, and I have a message right now from them to tell you a little bit more about it.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. So it's back to school time for the kids, right? Well, let me ask you something. Take just a second and think about what something is that you'd like to learn. I'm going to freely admit I'm one of those lifelong learners. Call me a nerd if you want, but I love learning new things and learning about things, whether it's history, whether it's science, whether it's language, whether it's art, whether it's, you name it. I find so much satisfaction out of learning things. I think some of that stems from just natural curiosity, but the other part of it is that it makes you feel like you've accomplished something when, hey, I learned this today. And it could be something that takes 5 minutes, or it could take 5 weeks if you take like an online course or something like that. There's so many things that we try to make time for during the course of a day. Carving out a little bit of time to learn something new isn't always at the top of the priority list either. But kids are always like learning and growing. We lose a little bit of that curiosity as adults. And I think sometimes when we stumble upon something that really grabs our attention, it kind of reawakens that awe that we had as kids in that natural curiosity. So again, I ask, what's something that you would like to learn? Is it a new language? Is it how to garden, how to cook something? Is it, figuring out how to, the ins and outs of electronics or computers, or maybe it's even a new sport that you'd like to learn how to do? So you might be asking, how does all of this relate to the fact that at the top of this spot, you said this show is sponsored by BetterHelp? Well, therapy can help you reconnect with that whole sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come really at any age. Therapy isn't necessarily just about talking. It's about learning as well. And it's about learning positive coping skills or how to set boundaries in your life. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And really, it's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. It can just be as simple as taking a few minutes a day for a little bit of self-care. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And you just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And hey, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you just feel like you're not completely gelling with the therapist you're originally matched with. Rediscover your curiosity this back to school season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN.
And welcome back to episode 316 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You just heard us lay out our 10 key predictions for the 2024-25 Montreal Canadiens. Hope you were following along and jotted your predictions down as well. Don't forget to follow us at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Visit our website at canadiensconnection.fm and text us anytime at 585-3-ROCKET. So this segment, we just bring you up to speed on the things that you need to know to get you ready for this coming week as a Montreal Canadiens fan. First and foremost, don't forget, we cover the Montreal Canadiens all in one place at InsideTheCanadiens.com. We have been credentialed journalists covering the Canadiens and their prospects for more than 15 years. We're the source that you can trust, and we're so grateful to each and every one of you for listening to the podcast, for watching our YouTube videos, for reading our written content, for following us on social media, and sharing all of our content with your followers. We really appreciate all of that. Speaking of our YouTube channel, be sure, just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com. That'll take you right there. Tap subscribe, hit the notification bell. We have videos that come out all throughout the week, all year long. And what you might have missed this week was last Monday, of course, the most recent Canadiens Connection episode, 10 factors that could make or break the Montreal Canadiens season. And that was recorded prior to knowing that Patrik Laine and David Reinbacher were not going to be part of the equation for a little while. And then Rocket Hockey Report was back this week. I have a video that came out on Tuesday called The AHL Roster Update the Montreal Canadiens Fans Won't Want to Miss. I basically broke down for all of you, as in terms of the Laval Rocket, who's back, who's not, and who's new. It's a really kind of quick consuming, easy way to get reacquainted with the Laval Rocket and what their roster could look like this year. And of course, we'll have a new episode of Habs Hockey Report coming out soon as well. Don't forget to subscribe. If you love our show, do us a favor and leave us a big, fat 5-star review. That really helps us on podcast platforms. If you want to help just a little bit more, it's just a little bit extra effort to share our podcast on Twitter or X, Facebook, Reddit, your socials, anywhere that you can share the podcast. We certainly appreciate when you do so, Rick. And it's just, it's going to be a fun season, and we're so happy and grateful to have so many fans following along with our content. And don't forget, if you want to, the season is just about to start, but if you would like to be part of our team here at Rocket Sports, reach out to us on that text line, 585-3-ROCKET. Tell us what you're interested in, and Rick will be in touch if there is an opportunity available.
The Rocket Sports team, as we've said, has been around for about 15 years now, and we have a lot of fun in what we do. It's more than just Amy and myself and Chris G, and we have Brian and Mike and Nathan and the doctor.
That's right.
It's our medical expert and Patrick, the NHL guru. If you have something that you want to contribute, please reach out to us. The other thing I'll say with respect to Rocket Sports is we're going to have some announcements about additional content we'll be putting out this season. And so watch for that this week, and we'll tell you all about it in next week's show.
That is right. I will make a quick update here with Laval just about to start their preseason game here shortly. They have put out their official lineup for that preseason game. It is, as RDS had reported earlier in the day, so it is quite possible that those four that you mentioned, Kandata, Tuck, Trudeau, Gignac, could be among the call-ups for Montreal tonight because they are not in Laval's lineup this afternoon.
Right.
Don't forget to contact us with your answers to this week's Canadiens Connection questions of the week. Who did impress you and who did not impress you during the preseason for Montreal this year? And also, where do you think the Montreal Canadiens are going to end up in the NHL standings at the end of this season? Send us a text at 585-3-ROCKET or leave us a comment in the comment section below the video on YouTube, or hit us up on any of our socials and answer it there. We would love to hear from you. Send all of your texts and tweets in. We love to hear everything you have to say. We appreciate all of your comments, and we really enjoy reading what you have to say all throughout the week. I am excited because there is one more final preseason game taking place tonight. Montreal will be playing at Ottawa for that. And then the regular season opens on Wednesday night. The Maple Leafs visiting the Bell Center. And then the very next night on Thursday, Montreal travels to TD Garden to take on the Boston Bruins. So it's going to be quite a 48 hours to start the season next week.
Great way to start the season, yeah.
Absolutely. And we will be back, of course, with the next Canadiens Connection podcast right here next Saturday, October 12th, 2024. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to send us your answers to this week's Canadiens Connection questions of the week. And just enjoy this last preseason game and get pumped up and hyped for the regular season to begin. We'll be back here next week to talk about it with you. Thank you so much for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.